Okay, I'm going to go through Keynes now, and you should have your copy of Keynes out or have the PDF available to go through as we walk through it. And now, a big heads up on this, Keynes is really hard to get at first, but once you get him, you understand how macroeconomics works, how economics on a large scale works, but you're also going to get some other ideas and kind of see how it's coordinated. So let me go through it for a bit and have again a copy of it available. So we're going to go through monetary policy. We're going to get to it. It's not easy to understand at first, nor is it easy to understand really the effects of inflation or deflation. So be patient with this. The big thing is to keep in mind the definition of economics as the production of wealth. It's not simply money, even though we're going to get into monetary policy. It really does get down to production. And so you have two different types of thinking going on within economics. You have theories, which are ways to make predictions and to explain certain phenomena. Why are certain things so? Why do we have so many, places to get a burrito on the corner of Apple Valley Road and Bear Valley Road, but we don't have any Ethiopian food? Well, you can go through a theory of supply and demand. The nature of the demand in the high desert is people don't really want Ethiopian food. Okay, they generally do. They want burritos. So that's why. That's a theory. It makes a prediction that there will not be an Ethiopian restaurant on that street corner anytime soon. So it explains why certain things exist. But it also is an empirical field. In other words, it deals with things that can be measured or demonstrated. So this is an aspect that it's going to share with the sciences, but you always got to keep in mind that economics is something that can be measured. We can take data. And what happens with Keynes is that he is built directly upon Smith's idea of supply and demand, but he uses that to explain what's going on in the economy as a whole. But he is addressing a crisis that Marx identified and is caused by productivity. It's a crisis that was happening again and again in Marx's day that Smith did not foresee. It was a blind spot in Smith. He didn't see the problem with overproductivity. Marx was seeing it and was seeing the crises caused again and again by the incredible productivity brought on by industrialization. So Keynes addresses the crisis that Marx saw, and he saw it happening in front of him. But he uses Smith's theory of supply and demand to address it. So we're going to go through this bit by bit. So hold on tight. This is going to take a little while, but once it makes sense, macroeconomics is going to make sense to you, basically. Okay, so let's go through this. So in paragraph 1, and this is going through Keynes, and this was written, we'll come back to this. This was written in 1923. Many people have the Depression in mind. The Depression was in 1929. This was 6 years before the Great Depression, but there had already been a number of depressions before that, just not quite as severe as the Great Depression. But we'll come back to that. Now in paragraph 1, he says, and this echoes Smith, money is only important for what it will procure. Thus a change in the monetary unit, which is uniform in its operation and affects all transactions equally, had no consequences. So in other words, if we change the monetary unit, it doesn't really matter. So in other words, if we shift over from dollars to euros to pesos, it doesn't really matter at all. So that's the monetary unit. Adding zeros onto it or adding a 2 onto your dollar bills and your $10, putting a 2 on it, or it doesn't matter. If everybody does it, no effect. But when he gets to paragraph 2, it follows, therefore, that a change in the value of money, this is enormously important. This is not a change in the monetary unit, but the value of that unit. That is to say, in the level of prices is important to society only insofar as its incidence is unequal. So in other words, it's going to affect different people differently. Such changes have produced in the past and are producing now the vastest social consequences because, as we all know, when the value of money changes, it does not change equally for all persons or for all purposes. So when you change the value of money, you cause great social effects. Okay, so if you just change the unit, you have no effect. If you change the value, it's massive. That's going to cause, it's going to come back to what's known as inflation and deflation. Okay, those are how we see the effects in the value of money. Okay, so let's go through that. So fluctuations create violence on a massive level, and this is in P3. The fluctuations in the value of money since 1914, that was really the start of World War I, have been on a scale so great as to constitute, with all that they involve, one of the most significant events in the economic history of the modern world. And notice that he does not mention the war itself. It's the economic effects that have been so profound. The fluctuations of the standard, whether gold, silver, or paper, has not only been unprecedented violence, but has been visited on the society which the economic organization is more dependent than that of any earlier epoch, on the assumption that the standard of value would be entirely stable. Now, this packs in a lot of information into one paragraph. What happened with World War I? Not only was it the greatest war that Europe, let alone America, had ever seen until then, but it hit it didn't matter whether or not countries were using a gold standard, or if they were using money standards. Countries produced money in order to pay for weapons. That production of money affected the value. It degraded the value, or if the government, basically went under, the value of money shot up. If the government disappears, then the money is more scarce. That's behind that fluctuation. If the government produces more money, so remember production, supply and demand. If you've got a production of money by the government, then the supply is increased. Its value relative to demand will decrease. That is inflation. If the government goes under and it no longer produces money, that is going to cause a constraint on production. There won't be nearly enough supply. That will, relative to the demand, that will cause the value to go up. Those things, the effects of supply and demand as a result of World War I and the behavior of the governments during World War I, those things cause the massive effects on society. Okay, so let's go back to this. So there really was behind all of this, the gold standard, I should mention, it comes up every semester. It really is really not worth going into. We haven't been on the gold standard. It was dismissed entirely in the early 70s under Nixon. But it had essentially been wiped out in the 20s and then in the 40s even more so. So the gold standard does not give stability. It doesn't. It just ties your money onto another commodity. That commodity itself will fluctuate, so it can. So there was always an assumption of stability in value, but that made the countries vulnerable. That made the countries, and every country assumed that the value of money would be stable, but that made them vulnerable to certain effects of supply and demand, as their monetary units were either supplied more or supplied less. Okay, so let's go up to 5. So each process, and this is going to be very important to keep these segments in mind, each process Inflation and deflation alike has inflicted great injuries. Each has an effect in altering the distribution of wealth between the different classes. Inflation in this respect being the worst of the two. Now, very important, don't stop at that sentence and think you've got it. Inflation's the real problem. You would be wrong. Okay? So each has also an effect in overstimulating or retarding the production of wealth, though here deflation is more injurious. It's very important to keep in mind that neither inflation nor deflation is preferable. They're both evils. They're evils of different varieties. Inflation is going to affect the distribution of wealth. Who basically does better in the long run? Okay. Deflation injures production severely, injures production. And you might not think that's such a bad thing. Well, unless you want a job, because then you are a producer. If in a deflationary economy, if you have a deflationary economy, you are at a high likelihood of losing your job. Okay? So it's not a matter of one is better or worse than the other. They're different. They're both going to create trouble. The division of our subject, thus indicated, is the most convenient for us to follow, examining first the effect of change in the value of money on the distribution of wealth. On the distribution of wealth, with most of our attention on inflation. That's the distribution of wealth. And next, their effect on the production of wealth, with most of our attention on deflation. So understand that the distribution of wealth gets to inflation. Inflation really gets to that issue with who gets, what from the work. But the production of wealth, who gets to work, that gets to deflation. So don't make the mistake of thinking inflation's the worst because, you misread Keynes. Don't misread Keynes, okay? So we're going to get to both. You're going to see that both are going to play out in different ways, but you want to avoid either one, okay? So let's go on. Now, Keynes comes back to something that Marx did, where he makes a division of classes. He does this, but he does it in a way that Marx didn't really foresee. So he does something that Marx did, but he does it in a way that Marx really didn't understand. He produces three different classes, and he saw these produced in the time period starting really through the 19th century. And these classes were produced by the introduction of industrialization or capitalism. He saw the production of the investing class, those who own shares of a company or of a property, but do nothing else. Their primary interest is getting returns on their investment, on the share that they own, on the property that they own, or the part of the property that they own, or the piece of stock that they own. That's what they want. They want to see returns. They want to be paid in response over a certain amount of time that they own that share or they own the property. They want to see returns on that ownership. Okay? That's how they move their money around. Next is the business class, what he identifies as the business class. These are the entrepreneurs who manage properties and businesses. These are the people like the CEOs. They see opportunities. They set up a new company, but they might use somebody else's money, or they might sell stock to use somebody else's money to chase after that opportunity. That's what the business class does. Again, if you've heard of entrepreneurs looking for opportunities, that's essentially the business class. So their big thing is look for an opportunity to be productive. That's great. The earning class, this in Marx is really discussed as if they are the working class. Keynes identifies them differently. They are essentially the workers. They provide labor to depend upon a job. They are interested in a stable position. In other words, to keep working, to keep producing, and then they're happy. That's great. That's their primary interest. So each one has a slightly different interest. But when the economy is working, there is an interdependence of classes, but different motivations and incentives. So they might have different motivations, but they all rely on each other when the economy is working, when it's moving forward, when it's expanding. Keynes saw these classes being produced during the 19th century. Okay, so the investing class supplying money. They buy property, they buy shares, they own bits and pieces of things. Then the business class, they are the ones who run it. They look for opportunities. They try to make a profit maximize, and they go after it, and they really direct the productivity. The earning class, these are the workers. They are looking for stability in their position so that they have a job to go to. So there is an interdependence of classes, but they have different motivations. Okay, so let's jump up. And this gets into, let's go to paragraph 7 here. So, well, let's do a little bit on 6. Changes in the value of money as affecting distribution. Okay, the productivity and the distribution of wealth is really what capitalism is about. You're going to see that here in the investing class. Of the various purposes which money serves, some essentially depend upon the assumption that its real value is nearly constant over a period of time. Now, if you think back to Smith, he made it very clear. Money is another commodity. That's not where wealth exists. It is, however, a commodity whose value will depend upon supply and demand. And notice that Keynes subscribes to that. He says some essentially depend upon the assumption that its real value is nearly constant over a period of time. Smith made it very clear that value is never constant, no matter what the commodity. It doesn't matter. He talked primarily about gold and silver, and he talked about how wrong-headed the Spaniards were to pursue gold wherever they went. He even said very clearly in a mocking tone that the Tartars were actually a little bit brighter to be looking for sheep than the Spaniards were, who were looking for gold, because sheep had use value. Gold instead was something used for exchange, and you valued things by it, but there was no value inherently in it. So the chief of these are those connected in a wide sense with contracts and for the investment of money. Now, one of the big developments of the 19th century was the idea of contracts. We make an agreement, and then over time, I will do this for you. If you just think about a simple contract that you have, for rent, you will sign a lease. That's a contract that you will live in this apartment, and you will pay out, $700 every month. That is a contract that is built on the notion of stability. That I will pay you $700 this month, and 6 months from now, the value of money I'm assuming is going to be stable, and I will pay you $600, or whatever I said, $700 6 months from now. But that behind that agreement is the assumption that money is going to be constant. What Keynes is pointing out is, that was an assumption. It wasn't necessarily true. Okay, so danger. So under this phase of capitalism, as developed during the 19th century, many arrangements were devised for separating the management of property from its ownership. So notice what was happening was that during the 19th century, there was the development of a new relation of two new classes. That was the management of property from its ownership. That was the creation of a distinction between the investment class and the entrepreneurial class. That did not exist before. Okay, so owners were separated from managers. These two classes were created during the 19th century. They didn't really exist before. They may have existed kind of, sort of, but they became distinct economic forces during the 19th century. In other words, during the time that Marx existed, but Smith didn't see it happening. There was a creation of stockholders, people who owned parts of the property. If you own stock, you actually own part of the company. You don't have any real management say, but you own part of it and you want to see returns. If you're part of the management class, the entrepreneurial class, you wanted to make that company grow. You had divergent interests, but you were interdependent. It was really what he says, and he says this in paragraph 10. It was the development of a new ideology that took hold. And let's look at this. This is in paragraph 10. The morals, the politics, the literature, and the religion of the age joined in a grand conspiracy for the promotion of serving God and mammon. That's, in other words, God and stuff, were reconciled. Peace on earth to men and good means. The rich man could, after all, enter the kingdom of heaven if only he saved. So this was really a value system that was created during the 19th century. He's being a little tongue-in-cheek, but this is what's going on in the 19th century. If you save and invest, you are doing good work. You're promoting society. This is peace on earth. All things are good. But under it is this notion that money is going to be stable, that it's not going to suddenly shift in value. Well, it could. You can't fully rely on the stability that you're seeing in money. Okay? So monetary stability is just for now. Okay, so that was the development of the new ideology. Okay, let's go down a bit. And behind it, let's go to paragraph 11. The atmosphere thus created, well harmonized, the demands of expanding business and the needs of expanding population with the growth of comfortable non-business class. That's the investment class. That was the growth. But amidst the general enjoyment of ease and progress, that was the 19th century. The extent to which the system depended on the stability of the money to which the investing class had committed their fortunes was generally overlooked, and an unquestioned confidence was apparently felt that this matter would look after itself. That was an error that Smith made. There was behind all of this general prosperity that was developing during the 19th century, and Marx was seeing it take place. Marx was seeing the expansion of capitalism. He was seeing bubbles burst here and there, but capitalism was expanding here and everywhere. And they were following this industrialization model that Smith had basically set out. But he says, Keynes says here, was generally overlooked, and an unquestioned confidence was apparently felt that the matter would look after itself. That was the Smithian assumption. That was incorrect. Money does not look after its own value. It's not inherently built into it. So we're going to get into how that breaks down and how it plays out. And ultimately what Keynes comes to is what's going to be called monetary policy and what we see today. So let me go into that in the next video. We'll have the Keynes follow-up video coming right up. Take care.